Hi guys, I'm Jay Clark. We're in SideChain Studios, which is a part of Infrasonic West, located in Los Angeles. Today I'm going to show you some advanced compression techniques with the WesAudio ngBusComp. So the track that we're going to be using today is by an artist named Fiona Silver called Vertigo. I did an Atmos mix of it, and let's take a listen, and then we're going to do some demonstrations with the BusComp. So I've had the ngBusComp for about 3 or 4 years since it was announced at NAMM in around 2020. Some of my favorite features are the iron section, which for me, with a compressor, I think it's important to have versatility to be able to hear the compressor. So being able to drive or push into transformers and get some saturation, some warmth, some, analog depth is really important to me, because otherwise, I would stay in the box for really clean, transparent compression. Also, I really do love the THD section, which, I think computers can do most anything, but one thing they still struggle with is saturation distortion. It has its own character and its own particular sound, but there's nothing like analog saturation distortion. You can really hear that in the THD. You get this sort of almost wavy graininess. That's how I hear it. That you can't really recreate yet in the box. So I love that section. Use sparingly or use heavily, whichever you like. Also, the mid-side function in any device is great to have. And then they recently turned us on to being able to use the SideChain to do feedback compression. This is a feed-forward compression out of the box, but you can send the output back into the SideChain, and then now you're doing feedback compression. We'll talk more about that later. And my favorite feature of it is the total recall with the plugin. In my room, I'm in the sweet spot. I have a lot of gear in here. I don't have a lot of space to have a lot of 19-inch rack stuff close to me. It's in the back of the room. Now, most of the time with most of the gear I use, I have to walk back there, tweak, come back and check on it. The beauty of this is I can sit right here, tweak the plugin, get my sound, and move on, and have total recall. So the track that we're going to be using today is by an artist named Fiona Silver. She's from New York. She's a friend of mine, also a bandmate. We have another project that we're working on right now called Loop. Look out for it. It's really cool. But this song is called Vertigo. I did an Atmos mix of it, but I brought the stems in and did a quick mix of it. And let's take a listen, and then we're going to do some demonstrations with the BusComp. So as you can hear, it's kind of a dirty rock and roll track, which I think is going to be great for this, because I'm going to really push into this and show some different colors you can get from it. I'm going to show you some examples of how and why to use mid-side compression, or maybe when. But before we do that, let's take a look at the plugin that represents the hardware and go over some of the features and layout, and we'll cut back and forth. You can see how it works in tandem. From the top, you have now. Think about this. I'm going to change the makeup gain here. Undo. You have undo for hardware. It's amazing. But so from the top, you basically have the output section. You have the makeup gain. You have meters here for in and out. Now this is great too, because I'm going to play this track and I want you to look at the levels going in and look at the meter over here where it says print, and then I will explain. So as you can see in the meters here, it's peaking around -12, or +12, I should say. And over here in Pro Tools, we're peaking at -4 full scale. And so, you have a lot more headroom in the analog world. So you can see if you want to push more into the device, and also into the iron section, which we'll talk about later. Down here, you have your threshold, standard, compression stuff, your ratios, which go from 1.5 to 410 to infinity, as well as dry wet mix, which is always a great feature. Parameter link, which we will be using off in this section. You can mute the mid and the side section, or the left and right. So we will also be using that, and that will come in very handy for auditioning how the compression sounds just in the side signal or the mid signal. Down here, you have the THD, which is total harmonic distortion. You have your attack, release, sidechain, external sidechain, as well as your connection. Now you can connect this with Ethernet or USB, and you would select which you have connected here. I use Ethernet because I have a lot of networking stuff. So you can copy settings. Here you have your selection of dual mono, stereo, or mid-side. Now banks, you can save presets into banks. So A, B, C, down the line. You get a lot of options, so you can quickly audition different settings by just clicking a button. So also down here in the bottom, you have a copy and paste section. So this here, as you can see, it says you can copy the mid to the side or vice versa. So you have a setting over here you like, you can copy it back and forth if you are not in parameter link, or if you get out of whack and then you put in parameter link, you can level things out. So now they're all linked and the settings are the same. So when should you use mid-side compression? That is a question you have to ask yourself. I like to use it, let's say, in a situation where, let's say you're mastering, right? And you get a note back that the vocal or maybe any center instrument feels a little too buried. You don't want to do EQ, you don't want to change the overall tone of the track. What you can do is you can take, let's unlink this, it's in mid-side. You can take, ultimately, you could take the threshold down, control the dynamics of the mid, how you have from maybe your initial settings, bring up the level. Or conversely, let's say you were doing standard stereo compression where all things are even. Let's have a setting like this. Let's get some compression. That's like a very safe, traditional way of doing a light bus compression. But let's say you got a lot of guitars, you got a lot of synths or something on the side, and they're just, getting in the way of the vocal. Generally, that's going to be the problem. So what you might want to do is take just the makeup gain of the side, bring it down. Now you're going to narrow your stereo image, but it may help bring the vocals or whatever you need in the center forward a bit more. And it's as simple as that. That's a way to use it. Now, another way that I like to use it is to completely get a different style of compression or no compression at all on the sides. So here's an example. So you can hear the side information is really reacting to the snare drum, but leaving a lot of the other stuff alone, while the mid is really kind of squeezing down on things and giving you that gluey, chewy, good stuff compression that people look for in the mix bus. Leaving the song feeling a bit more open while still controlled. Another thing that you can do that's really cool in here is, for example, let's say we're going to do no compression on the side. Let's have a listen to that. But you can take the THD and you can use that to color the sides a bit, bring the level back up to match what you've done over here in the mid. And let's listen to that real quick. Here's an example of the mute functionality. That's great. Listening to the side only. So you can see it gets a little grainier with the THD, which sounds nice. The beautiful thing about this, being able to see the waveform in this plugin, is that we're only seeing the sort of random transient peaks of the snare drum, which I talked about before. So it's still just tapping those down, but now we've colored it. It's also saturating it a bit, so you don't need as much compression. You can just let the saturation work for you, which is a bit more musical, rounding off the transient as opposed to getting kind of heavy compression artifacts on side info, maybe making your mix feel a little bit wobbly. All right, let's go into a louder section of the song, and I'm just going to play around with the compressor and just let you hear a few different results.
Tell me where I ought to find my strength when the floor is tipping to the ceiling. What a feeling. Vertigo. My head is spinning round and round and round. My head is spinning round and round and round. Then I hit the ground. Chance encounter with a certain sense. Black and red spinning roulette. Life's a gamble, so let's brace up and do you feel lucky? Tell me where I ought to find my strength when the floor is tipping to the ceiling. What a feeling. Vertigo. My head is spinning round and round and round. My head is spinning round and round and round. Then I hit the ground.
So as you can hear, they're doing a modest amount of compression for a master. On the mid, about 4 dB in compression, but I'm only blending in 30%, 39%. So it's really squeezing it, but it's bringing up kind of the overall nominal level. You feel the density, you feel that, but you still have all the transient information and the movement of the original. And then the side is just a little bouncy. It's not doing too much. And I think it sounds really cool. Now let's talk about one of my favorite features, the iron mode. For those of you who don't know what iron mode is, it's a transformer. So in here, there are Carnhill transformers that we're going to be hitting. And one of the best features is that you have an iron pad, which means you can push the makeup gain into the transformers and pad the iron so you can hit the transformers a little bit harder, get a little more of that saturation and bloom that you get from transformers. Now, with transformers, how I like to think of it is you think of a sound wave pushing into something. For me, in the low end is where you kind of feel it and hear it the most. And I think of it as like it's slowing the wave down and all that energy starts to build up, and then you get that saturation, which gives you more harmonics and makes it a richer source. So it's nice to be able to have the option to really dial in how much you want to push into it, really find that sweet spot for yourself, and then pad the output so you're not clipping your converters or any other devices after. So now we're back in the stereo mode on the compressor, and let's take a listen to this track, and I'll demonstrate some of the iron mode, which I think for this song in particular, it's a great feature because it's already kind of a dirty song, and it's like, this will really help kind of glue this mix together and make it all gel very nicely. Let's take a listen.
Tell me where I ought to find my strength when the floor is tipping to the ceiling. What a feeling, vertigo. My head is spinning round and round and round. My head is spinning round and round and round. Then I hit the ground. Chance encounter with a certain death. Black and red spinning, ruling. Life's a gamble, so let's brace our bets. Do you feel lucky? Tell me where I ought to find my strength when the floor is tipping to the ceiling.
So you can feel that push. It's pushing in there, and you can feel like almost the music stopping. It has to take a second to get through one transformer, one end of the magnet, jump to the other end. You can really feel that push. It kind of squeezes things together, and I think it sounds really nice. So it's nice to have that in. Then you can blend in the dry, keep your really transient information if you want to or not. I say go crazy, do whatever you like. Another great use for this is if you have something, say that you've done completely in the box, you've done with VSTs or whatever, and it's a little too flat, digital, lacks depth, maybe a little width. You could use something like this. You could even do no compression, just push into the transformers, and you're going to get some real true analog warmth and dynamic saturation by, skipping the compressor and just pushing into the transformers. So let's take a listen to just the drums and play around with the transformer and the compressor. Spanky, isn't it? So now take a look at this VU meter. I'm going to play this back and let's look at what it's doing. It's helping control the transients, not just from the compressor. The compressor is actually making it more transient, but then it's hitting the transformers, rounding off those transients. And if you look at the meter over here, you're going to get a smoother, more analog sound. Now, that is helpful because in the mix, you're not fighting all those transients. You don't need too many things being too transient. So if this is something, the drums that are, too jumpy, too transient, maybe you have acoustic guitars or something, you can use this to help smooth that out. Then when you're doing your mix later on in life, you're going to have an easier ride. And the beauty is, you can always blend it in. You get a vibey, punchy drum sound with a lot of color and good vibes, but you have ultimate control over how much you want to use. Another great feature in the iron mode is that once you have, a rough idea of, maybe how much you want to hit the transformers, you can use this link knob here to then push in more or less, and it's also balancing out the iron pads so you're not having any level discrepancy. So you can really hear what you're adding to the source. Let's take a listen.
Tell me where I ought to find my strength when the floor is tipping to the ceiling. What a feeling. Vertigo. My head is spinning round and round and round. My head is spinning round and round and round. Then I hit the ground.
As you can hear, the more you push into it, the more squished and compressed it gets, but it's not actual compression, it's harmonic distortion. So it's nice to be able to, find that sweet spot, and then again, you can mix it in to taste or just go all ham and let it rip. So as I said earlier, I really like analog gear that has a lot of character and color options. Now, this has not only the transformer, which we just talked about, the iron section, but we also have the THD knob over here. Now let's take a listen and we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Tell me where I ought to find my strength when the floor is tipping to the ceiling. What a feeling. Vertigo. My head is spinning round and round and round.
Obviously that's too much, but I really wanted you to be able to hear it. Now, that is not like any other distortion that I've really heard in the box. Now, use sparingly on a mix, if even, but hey, try it, you might like it. But on an individual bus or, instrument, it might go a lot further. So let's listen to just the guitars and play around with that. So you can really hear it, depends on the source, right? So it's good for something maybe that's transient. It's good for something where you want to hear the color. It definitely has a sound and it adds a sound. So you really got to listen carefully and pay attention to how much you're using, but it's a great tool to have in your arsenal. So you may ask yourself, why would you need the THD as well as the transformer mode for harmonic distortion? And the answer would be, in my opinion, that the iron mode, you hear and feel that distortion, that harmonic warmth, richness, more in the low mid range, whereas the THD is, as you heard, clearly in the upper range. So highs, high mids, you really hear a little sizzle, a little crunch that you don't get from the transformer mode. So you can balance those two out, and you can really, get a lot of sonic options. So now let's take a look at using the ngBusComp on an individual element of this mix. We're going to put on the bass, and let's see if we can use the THD to bring the bass out a little bit more, maybe make it a little bit fuller, and just give it a little more, a better place to sit in the mix.
My head is spinning round and round and round. Then I hit the
Now, this is an example of where you have so much headroom that maybe I want to push in this harder. So I'm going to add a trim plugin so we can see if we can really dirty this thing up.
Tell me where I ought to find my strength when the floor is tipping to the ceiling. What a feeling, vertigo. My head is spinning round and round and round. What a feeling, vertigo. My head is spinning round and round and round. My head is spinning round and round and round. Then I hit the ground. Tell me where I ought to find my strength when the floor is tipping to the ceiling.
As you can hear, the combo of quite a heavy amount of THD and the compression really smooths out the bass and kind of helps it just sit a little more level in the mix. Now, again, with something like that, this song is really kind of, you know, down and dirty, and this sort of character is great for it, but you might need to use it a little more sparingly in other situations. So, again, you can blend it in. So, you know, get it sounding real nasty, real nice, and then just blend it into taste. And that's the beauty of the Total Recall and the plugin. I'll tell you that. So now let's talk about the external sidechain. Generally, the external sidechain is used for filtering the signal that is triggering the compression. So here we have 60 hertz, 90, 150, and then 2 tilt modes. Now, this is a VCA compressor that is similar to an SSL style, which we all know and love. Now, this has more bells and whistles, so that's great. But using these tilt modes, you can get a bit closer to, say, an API 2500 or just a different sidechain curve, which has a different response than the standard SSL style compressor. Moving on, we have external. Now, what we have done today is if you take the output, if you have a Y cable, you can have a Y cable from the output, female, split that to a TRS, send the TRS back into the external on the back of the device, and then send the remaining signal off to your interface or wherever you're sending it, console or whatever. What we're doing here, this is normally a feed-forward compressor. Now, feed-forward means that the compression is happening as the signal flows through the circuit before it gets to the compressor. What we're doing here is we're sending the signal that is triggering the compression back from the output. Seems strange, but it's true, to then trigger the compressor after it's passed to the output. Now, what do you get when you do that? Feedback compression is generally considered to be smoother, more musical, and I would say that's mainly because it's slightly late. Now, we're talking about microseconds maybe. This is analog, so it's you know, speed of sound. You do the math. But more transients get through, a little more laid back, right? The music is not, you get something triggering it, it's not slamming down it, it's a little laid back, right? So you get a groove to it, to whatever the signal is. Now let's take a listen, and I'll flip back and forth between this external and the normal feed forward, and we'll see what we like.
Tell me where I ought to find my strength when the floor is tipping to the ceiling. What a feeling, vertigo. My head is spinning round and round and round.
already just from one flip. You can see in the meter here, the gain reduction needle is a lot less sporadic because it's receiving the signal slightly late. So you're not getting that sort of initial jump all the time. Let's listen some more, and we'll play with some different settings, faster attack, maybe slower release, you know, and see what it does.
Tell me where I ought to find my strength when the floor is tipping to the ceiling. What a feeling. Vertigo. My head is spinning round and round and round. My head is spinning round and round and round. Then I hit the
You can see those drum transients are really creating somewhat of an out-of-time pump. Now, when you have it kicked in, it's much smoother, much more relaxed. You're letting those initial bursts get through without triggering, and so you get a little smoother response.
Tell me where I ought to find my strength when the floor is tipping to the ceiling. What a feeling. Vertigo. My head is spinning round and round and round. My head is spinning round and round and round. Then I hit the ground.
And you can use the fast attack, which in this situation I wouldn't use, but you can see the response is much smoother. So it's a great option to have, especially for, you know, a full mix or something where you don't want the compressor to be reacting so quickly and so sporadically to a large amount of information. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to WesAudio's YouTube, and you can find links for myself and the artist in the description as well. If you want to try the ngBusComp in your own studio, reach out to your local audio dealer. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.